All right. Welcome, folks. Good morning. We continue our mimer. Tana Rabbana Ner Hanukkah. Our sages teach about the light of Hanukkah. We asked some questions yesterday. We began with an answer. We'll leave the questions right now so we could go into the answers. Okay. Let's see. So the mimer is going to speak about the menorah, Hanukkah menorah, that is, specifically, how it's higher than the natural order of creation. And therefore, that results in the practical differences in how we celebrate with the menorah, different than the menorah that was used in the Holy Temple itself. So what's the goal of the menorah? What is its goal trying to accomplish? That goal that is different than the goal of the menorah of the Holy Temple. Well, we'll see that from the story itself of what happened, that it's about ultimately lighting up the darkness. And that's the story of Hanukkah. What happened? The Greeks, they persecuted the Jews. They entered into the Heichal, the main building of the Holy Temple. They ritually made the Heichal impure. They disqualified all of the oil, that it too was impure. Now, holiness is referred to light. Why? Because holiness means you're connected to your source. Yeah. Light always is connected to its source, right? The ray of sun is coming from the sun, right? We know it's connected to a source, right? The light in this room right now, coming from a light bulb, right? It's connected to its source. That's holiness, right? And the Greeks were against the holiness. Therefore, it's referred to darkness, just as darkness is in opposition to light. And they brought much darkness, in other words, in opposition to holiness. Again, not only did they defy the Heichal, the Holy Temple itself, but the oil, the pure olive oil, as we just described, is um, the idea of holiness. And in a certain way, the defilement of the oil is even worse and more significant than the defilement of the building itself. How so? Oil represents Kodesh, holiness, the ultimate level of holiness. When we speak about oil, we speak about olive oil, right? The ultimate in the holiness. Because the physical property of oil represents this idea of holiness, as that oil floats on top of other liquids, meaning that it's higher than all others. That's the ultimate of holiness, that it remains above, beyond. The word holy, Kodesh in Hebrew, means beyond. So it's beyond the norm, that it floats above. It remains unto itself, right? It's not mixed together. And this is what oil represents. The Greeks specifically defiled the pure oil, even though they had already defiled and made impure the heichal. Let's let in. Which represents a lower level of holiness. Right. So that's what the oil represents. That's what they defiled. We also see and how to purify the oil, that it too is a greater that in the defilement, it's a worse defilement. In the purification process, it's also a greater process. When the Jews won the war against the Greeks, so they purified the Heichal. They purified, but they still needed a miracle in order to light the menorah, to light it in purity. Since the holiness of the oil was even higher than the holiness of the Heichal, there's still another step required. In other words, the darkness that affected the menorah was even a stronger darkness that affected the Heichal. And even therefore a higher light, a greater miracle was necessary to combat the darkness. Wow. So as we know the story, a single jar of oil, which had the seal of the Kohen Gadol, of the high priest, was found. That represents Or Ein Sof. Excuse me. Right? The oneness of God, the one jar, everything is, everything is precise. The infinite revelation of Hashem that's beyond the constraints of the natural world, that they found one that itself was, wow, miraculous. Right. Now, darkness itself can only affect light that's part of the natural world. Right? That's all it can do. That's what we have. We have day, we have night. That's affecting the natural light of the world. However, the revelation of the Or Ein Sof, the infinite of God, his infinite light, not only it's not only able to prevent darkness, but it's actually able to make the darkness shine itself. Wow. What does it mean that the darkness itself will shine? Well, we'll see. We'll see. But that's a powerful idea, right? When we have day and night, we don't have the night itself illuminated, right? Night is night and day is day. They each have their boundaries, and that's the nature of the world. So darkness could push away light in the nature of this world. But God, that's beyond nature. And that's what's represented by that flask, one single jar of oil, the oneness of God. Right? Sort of like on that level, it's not like, oh, they just overlooked one. I mean, it's played itself out in that they overlooked one, but really what it is the infinite holiness of God that darkness can't get to it. Sort of like the other way around, so to speak, right? And not only that, but it ultimately it's going to make that darkness shine. Mm. So now that we understand the goal of Hanukkah is to light up the darkness, that will now provide some answers to our questions that we had at the beginning, beginning of the mimer that we expressed yesterday. The reason Hanukkah menorah is after sundown, right, is because it's dark outside then. As opposed to, if you recall, right, as opposed to, remember, the miracle of the Hanukkah menorah happened with a menorah that's not a Hanukkah menorah. It was the menorah of the Holy Temple. So when do you light the menorah of the Holy Temple? Oh, an hour and a quarter before sundown, when it's still light out. That's when you light it. Not the Hanukkah lights. That was a question we had. Why? We also had a question, why do we light 8 candles? Okay, it took, it was a miracle of 8 days, yet it happened with a menorah. That was a menorah of 7. So our answer is because the goal is different. It's about illuminating the darkness. That's what Hanukkah is about, right? That's why it's after sundown. That was a question we had. Also explains why 8, the menorah of 8, because 8 represents beyond nature. God created the world in 7 days. 6 days, he did work. In 7th day, he rested. So the world, the nature of the world, the cycle of the world is 7 days a week. That's a cycle of creation. By the way, incidentally, it's on a natural cycle, 7, not a natural cycle as like the sun is. I mean, the sun is 365 days in a quarter, right? It's complete rotation. The moon is 29 days, 11 hours, 48 minutes, complete rotation, right? The week, it doesn't have a rotation, except that God created the world in 7 days based on his 7 emotions. Fine, but it's not that itself is interesting. In any case, the menorah is 8 because that represents revelation of godliness beyond the order of nature, one beyond nature, right? And that's what you need in order to illuminate the darkness. You can't illuminate the darkness from within the creative process. Again, you have daytime, no darkness. You have nighttime, no light. I mean, I guess you have light from the moon, but still nighttime. We're clear so far. We're good. Everybody's on board. Amazing. Now, what's some of the practical meaning of what we have just spoken about? Let's understand. Let's take this a step deeper. What exactly were the Greeks after? Excuse me. What is it about the oil that the Greeks wanted to defile it specifically? Previous Rebbe explains that the story of Hanukkah is a story about the spiritual well-being of the Jewish people. It wasn't about the physical harm that would come to the Jewish people. The Greeks weren't out after to kill us. That was not their intent. I mean, yes, there was a war, and a war, of course, that means something different. But that's not what their intent was when they came to defile. They didn't make a pogrom. They ransacked the Holy Temple, right? So they didn't have the problem of a Jew. They just had a problem with Judaism, Torah and mitzvahs. And that's what the purity of the oil really only has religious significance. To defile the Holy Temple, was more of you know, physical thing. But the oil was more of a spiritual thing. So what's going on? So the Greeks didn't even oppose Judaism per se. So they weren't against the Jew, like, it wasn't like Nazis, God forbid, Imach Shemam. It's not what it was, death to the Jews or anti-Semitism that you might, encounter today. The Greeks, they were very philosophical. They were intellectually inclined. They didn't mind that a Jew would study Torah. They appreciated wisdom, and they knew that there was wisdom in the Torah. They had strong cultural values that were based in wisdom, intellect. But what they wanted is to remove it from Hashem's Torah, that it has holiness to it. That it's, a beautiful teachings that inspires and, creates a better person, creates a better community, a more wholesome society. That's wonderful. We're for that. But holiness, something that is supra-rational, right? Mm-mm. And that's what we say in the davening, in our prayers, is that they wanted to hashkicham Torasecha, to make you forget your Torah. Now, it didn't mean to forget Torah wisdom, but it's your Torah, yours, God. That Talmud has great wisdom? Absolutely. In South Korea, they learned Talmud. Non-Jews, it's a big thing there, right? Not learning it because it's God's Torah, because they know that Jews are very accomplished people, and they also want to become accomplished. So what's the source of their education? Oh, Talmud. That's what they've been learning for the last 2,000 years. Oh, okay. You know what? Let's learn it. We'll become successful. That's what's going on in South Korea. Now, for South Koreans, maybe that's okay, but not for the Jew. Right? Can't remove God from the Torah. Can't do that. Same thing was with mitzvahs, right? Same thing with mitzvahs. They valued culture and tradition. No problem. You have your traditions. You want to have lox and bagels, right? You want to bring the family together once a week for a Friday night meal? We're game. Not a problem with that. Everybody has culture. Everybody has some kind of traditions. But that the commandment is divine. In other words, you're going to gather your family for Shabbos, even if the family ain't there, even though there's maybe you know, uh, a soccer game going on, or maybe there's a great entertainer that night. So, okay, so you'll get together another night, the family, right? That it's a divine commandment. And that's what we say also in the davening. Lahavira mechuke retzenecha. That they wanted to remove us, take us away from the chayik. Chayik means mitzvahs that are beyond rationality, and that they're your mitzvahs, God. How is it beyond reason? Like keeping kosher, right, is beyond logic and rationality. The laws of purity, which we had recently learned in Rambam, they're not rational. They're beyond rationality, beyond logic. They saw, the Greeks, that there's no place for that in a cultured society. And that they were fighting against. Okay. I'm going to continue on this. Fascinating. Fascinating story. All right.